Welcome back into the Blerd Wire. Today we are talking about perhaps the most anticipated movie of this entire year, and that is without a doubt, unquestionably, James Gunn's Superman. Is dropped in theaters. I wish I could have seen it opening weekend, but I've just been so busy. But I finally get a chance to come back and review it and talk about it. So let's dive right in and break down. First of all, I want to make a very clear announcement. This video will have spoilers. If you have not seen Superman, as much as I would love for you to stay on my channel and watch my video, I'm going to politely ask you to go watch it and then come back and then, soak it in all the things, because this is definitely going to be a very spoiler heavy video. Spoiler heavy, heavy spoilers on this one. But that's because the movie is fantastic. It's very solid, very solid. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed myself being there. And I think the things that were so to me are very small, right? Very almost nitpicky. But my main thought is this movie was very solid. It's a very good start for James Gunn's DCU. And I think I was a little afraid because I was like, if this flops or if it's just not reviewed very well, there's a chance that James Gunn's DCU, like, we don't get another DC movie for years, right? Because Warner Bros. Is not going to keep hemorrhaging money after that string of a terrible 2022 to 2023. The only movie that DC movie that made money in those 2 years was The Batman. Like, just let that sink in. Only movie that made money for Warner Bros. Between 2022 and 2023, The Batman. And they released like 7 movies. So that's why it's so important for this one to do well. And I think James Gunn did exactly what he should do. The best way for me to describe Superman, again, heavy spoilers, it's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie with Superman in it. Like, and that might sound like an oversimplification, and I don't want it to sound like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't want to sound like Guardians of the Galaxy is the only thing James Gunn can do. But it's impossible to not point out the similarities, right? I see why he wanted Metamorpho in the movie, because he's like, oh, I have a character that can just be a head. Like, that's very James Gunn, and you could tell that he wanted that specifically in this movie. Like, everything I watched Metamorpho do, I was getting like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 vibe with all of the creatures and how just strange they looked, and the way James Gunn likes to have things that look a little weird, monsters, things like that. Even the Mr. T fight, like, I want to put a clip of Mr. T going up against Luthor's Ravens against a Guardians of the Galaxy fight, whether they were fighting the monster at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or any other fight, and you will see the cinematography is almost exactly the same. And it still works, right? This is a very bright Superman film. It's a very hopeful Superman film. It's not the same as Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. And I think, like, in the fighting style, I noticed there's a lot more agility to the fighting styles. And I think Zack Snyder really highlighted power, like the way that every time Superman punched, you saw the shockwaves go off of it. I think James Gunn was more concerned with showing the agility of the fights and the different ways that characters would move around. I feel like you got that a little bit more. So, I'm trying to think if I want to start. I'm going to start with strengths and the things I liked about this movie. The first thing I have to qualify this as is, like, there's a lot of buzz going around on, like, whether this is a political movie or not. And I won't say it's not a political movie, but it's not a right-wing or a left-wing movie. It's not a woke or, conservative or liberal, or it doesn't fit into the right or left American culture war that's going on. And it's so annoying having people go back and forth on it. Fox trying to say that it's woke and all this stuff, because it's like, this has nothing to do with that. This is a piece of art. This is culture that is put out into the world for comic book fans to enjoy. And you're ruining it by trying to add some political ramifications that are just not there. No matter whatever side you on, there are no political ramifications in this movie. Now, I can't say it's not a political movie, but that's actually what I loved about it. Because the entire conflict, again, Superman spoilers, the entire conflict is that Superman stopped a war. And I think that's the perfect way, because, like, the movie starts off with us being like, 300 years ago, metahumans arrived, and I thought that was clever too. 3 decades ago, A baby was discovered on Earth 3 years ago. This baby grew up to announced himself as Superman, started saving the world. And then 3 weeks ago, he stopped a war. And that was the unique part. And that was to me, that's the most interesting part that we could get into because 3 weeks ago, he stopped a war between geopolitical tensions between, I can't remember the nations, it's like Moravia and Juthapar, something like that. Made up nations, obviously, but he stopped a conflict between the two of them. And I thought that was a brilliant way to get into a Superman movie, right? Because it's a brilliant way to show, like, okay, why should we care about this era in Superman's life? Obviously, he's been doing it for a little bit, but why do we care about this one? It's like, this is the first time he's done something that a nation could either take as an act of war against them or something that falls more in the gray area, but still falls along the I'm saving lives, right? Like it's a perfect moral dilemma because like if you imagine in our world right now, if someone had the power of Superman, would they stop Russia from invading Ukraine? Would they have stopped the war between Israel and Hamas? And who wouldn't if you had the power of Superman? Like that would be a great question to ask. And so that's why the central conflict within this movie is I love it. And it was perfect. It was perfect. And I hope that it gets, and I think it sets up to be explored further, right? Because in a world full of metahumans, I think the central question is, are the metahumans in charge now? And this is a great example of why people don't want them in charge, why the humans are afraid, because now they're making the rules. Like I said, even though most people in the world, most people can agree war is bad, right? So Superman's like, okay, I'm going to go stop it. But when you're actually in the war, they don't, it adds a lot of tension and a lot of intrigue, right? Because again, we imagine how we react if that happened in our world right now between Russia and Ukraine or between Israel and Hamas or Israel and Iran. Like any of these conflicts going on, what would be the ramifications if a superpowered being who was born and raised in the US just went over there and stopped it and didn't talk with the US government? He just stopped it. And he had a good reason to do so. Like you said, people were going to die, right? And so he just busted up all their tanks. And so that is my favorite part of the movie. And I'm glad that the entire movie rests on that. So to me, that in itself makes the movie a success for me because I think that's interesting. It's deep. It's an excellent way for us to wonder why we should care about this era of Superman and this era of metahumans. Because what's going to happen is we're going to see the conflict between humans and metahumans between who's in charge, right? Who's in charge? And if you watch any of the DC animated films, there's a lot of really good movies about how Superman does one thing and it's kind of like the first step. And it's like people are wondering, is this the first step where Superman sets his own rules for the governments everywhere? Like he stopped the war. Is he going to stop other wars? Is he going to stop combat missions? Like what else is he going to stop? Is he just going to start inflicting his will? Because again, now his will was good, but you can't deny he inflicted his will on that country by stopping the war. Now, again, he wanted to save lives, so you could argue he had a good reason to do so, but that doesn't change the fact that he inflicted his will and no one could stop him. And to me, like even a way better setup for Batman versus Superman. Like now I can easily believe Batman coming in and having a issue or trying to like that's a way better setup than Batman versus Superman. If Batman versus Superman had started with Superman like ending a war, that would have made way more sense for the conflict. And I wish they had thought of that. And I don't know how they didn't. But to me, that's what lets me know James Gunn is the right guy to have in charge because that was an interesting conflict. And I really didn't have a lot of issues necessarily. I liked Lex Luthor. I liked what they did with Ultraman. Um, I think Nicholas Hoult was fantastic as Lex Luthor, like I said. I think my only thing is either the movie could have been a little bit longer or I would have been okay trimming out some stuff so we could have got a little bit more of Superman and Lois because I think Rachel Brosnahan did a great job as Lois. I think I like her better than Amy Adams, honestly. I think she might be one of my favorite Lois Lanes ever. I mean, but we didn't get a whole lot of her, and nor did we get a whole lot of her with Clark. They maybe had 3 scenes together. They had one where this kind of interview slash argument. They had another one where, they connected a little bit more and she gave him a hug. And then at the end, they just, had that long makeout scene. So I think Sean Chandler made a good point. I think we just needed some more of it. And so that brings me to like my biggest, I'm not going to say issue, but to me, you had a really solid plot with the stopping a war and the way that Lex Luthor was involved. in that he was allowing selling weapons to the Baravians. Again, I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. He was selling weapons to them, so he was getting rich off of them. And then they revealed that he was selling it for less because they were, when they took over this country, they were going to give half of it to him. And based upon the oil reserves or whatever, that probably was going to be very valuable to him, which again makes perfect sense for his motivation. And honestly, I would have been fine if that was his only motivation for wanting to stop Superman, because Superman stopped a war for him getting rich. Now, again, that is just kind of a villain of like, okay, Richie Mick Rich is only evil because he wants to be rich, which I mean, is kind of overdone. But I think it would have been an interesting introduction to Lex Luthor and Superman. So in the movie, they decided that Luthor started the whole conflict and everything because he wanted a reason to kill Superman because he knew that Superman would start end the conflict. To me, I think I would have been just okay if Lex Luthor was like, why is Superman ending this war? Okay, now I got to get him out of the way because I want this country, and the desire for power, it drives a lot of people. So it could have even been beyond money. And I think it would have been an interesting introduction to like once Superman, obviously wins. Now this is Lex Luthor's first introduction to Superman, and we're going to see Lex Luthor again, obviously. And now he's like, oh, now he has a hatred. Now he has a hatred for Superman because I mean, most of the comics and shows just show that Lex Luthor hates Superman. Like he looked at him and he hates him, just kind of like a irrational. You could say it's like a discriminatory, alien, xenophobic fear, but it's just basically like I see him, I hate him, and I mean, I don't know which one is better rather than just like, oh, he's in the way of me getting rich and getting a country, or I don't like him, so I'm going to get a country and get rich on the premise of having a reason to kill him. I don't know which is better, but I do just, I think I would have been fine. And the reason why is because if that was the only reason and that trimmed a little bit time out, the whole pocket universe thing, it was cool. But I remember seeing a lot of the CGI shots in the Pocket Universe looked really good, but there were some other CGI shots that didn't look so good. And to me, the Pocket Universe wasn't as crucial to the plot as the war between those two countries. So I don't necessarily mean that like it should have been dropped from the movie, but if you tell me that, hey, if we dropped this whole Pocket Universe storyline and Superman was just in a regular jail next to Metamorpho who can make kryptonite, which would have been a fine way to trap him, and that trimmed a lot of the CGI budget so we can make it go towards other places where the CGI didn't quite hit as well, or you could kind of tell it wasn't quite there. If that was made to polish that up and it gave us a little bit more time, we can add another scene with Superman and Lois. Um, I would have been fine with that. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but basically I'm saying like if dropping that Pocket Universe storyline meant more CGI budget towards the other things that didn't quite turn out as well, and more time with Superman and Lois, I would have been fine with that. And I think it would have ended up being a slightly better movie because I think you still could have had everything about Lex Luthor just without the Pocket Universe, ripping the universe apart. And I think Ultraman, they did a great job with him too, like having him covered up. When I saw it in the theater, I honestly thought that Ultraman, he looked like David Corenswet already looks so much like Henry Cavill. When Ultraman had his mask pulled off and it was just a clone of Superman, which makes perfect. Even I was surprised by it, but I wasn't surprised after it happened. To me, the evil clone has been done so much, like with Logan and all these other movies. I think it would have been really funny because I was like, he looks so much like Henry Cavill. Like if James Gunn had just cast Henry Cavill as Ultraman. Now I don't know if Henry Cavill would have done it, and I don't know if it would have made the Snyder fans or anyone else like happy about it because he would have been defeated like in this first movie. I just think it would have been funny. And I think that hairstyle and the way that they made David Corenswet look for the role of Ultraman, this clone of Superman, I think it would have worked. It'd been really funny if it was Henry Cavill who was playing him. So that's just my only personal thought on that one. So let me know your thoughts about Superman. Did you like it? Did you not like it? I was gonna do a ranking of my favorite live action Supermans, but I've only really grown up with three because I never watched Smallville. The Christopher Reeve movies were way before my time, and I didn't really watch the Dean Cain series. So I only have three to rank. So I was like, I don't really have much to rank there. But let me know your thoughts on Superman. Is the DCU in good hands with James Gunn? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I covered. I thought Nathan Fillion did a great job. I thought the ramifications though of Hawk Girl killing the dictator of Boravia, I hope gets explored sooner than later. Because I know James Gunn said the universe is going to be more like Star Wars, where different stories all happen in the same world. But we need to cover that like now. And then, of course, there's the Millie Alcock of it all as Supergirl, which would be interesting to compare her to Melissa Benoist as Supergirl, who is more of like a good girl all the time. So let me know your thoughts about Superman. Let me know about where you think the direction of the DCU is headed and if it's in good hands. And as always, thank you for joining the Blerd Wire.